The Las Vegas Raiders made big news today. They officially announced that Pete Carroll has joined the team as head coach. Along with him, John Spytek is now part of the Raiders staff too. Earlier, there were rumors that Spytek might leave and join the Jacksonville Jaguars with Liam Cohen after some recent drama. But that's not happening. Spytek is staying with the Raiders. It's now set in stone. Pete Carroll and John Spytek are officially part of the Raiders organization. With this big change, we need to focus on something important: the coordinators. I truly believe that the Raiders' success will depend on how well their coordinators perform. Pete Carroll is an experienced coach, especially on the defensive side. While he has called plays in the past, he usually lets his coordinators handle play-calling duties. This style of coaching works well for some of the top teams. For example, coaches like Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and Matt LaFleur often call their own plays, but others, like Pete Carroll, delegate those responsibilities to their coordinators. For Carroll, hiring skilled coordinators is critical to the team's success. Now, let's talk about some potential coordinators, starting with the offense. One name that stands out is Darrell Bevell. Bevell worked with Pete Carroll during their time with the Seattle Seahawks, where he served as the play caller. He has a strong chance of becoming the offensive coordinator for the Raiders. Darrell Bevell is a name that should excite Raiders fans. He was the play caller for the Seattle Seahawks when they won the Super Bowl, so he has proven himself at the highest level. Bevell knows how to build a successful offense, even under challenging conditions. During Pete Carroll's early years with the Seahawks, the team focused more on defense and played conservatively on offense, and it worked. That same approach might be a good fit for the Raiders, especially since the team doesn't have a strong quarterback right now and has invested heavily in its defense. Darrell Bevell is currently the favorite to become the Raiders' offensive coordinator, and he could be a great choice. However, I'll admit he's not my top pick. There are other talented options out there, and some of them have worked with Pete Carroll before. One name to keep in mind is Shane Waldron. Waldron spent the last 3 years of Pete Carroll's time with the Seahawks as the offensive coordinator, and he made a big impact. He's credited with helping Geno Smith turn his career around, transforming him into the quarterback we've seen in recent years. While Smith didn't play under Waldron or Pete Carroll this past season, Waldron still deserves recognition as a skilled play caller. Shane Waldron's career has had its ups and downs. He took a job as the offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears but was fired mid-season. However, I don't think Waldron was fired because he's a bad play caller. It seemed more like a desperate move by head coach Matt Eberflus to save his own job. A few weeks later, Eberflus was fired too. Honestly, I think the Bears might have been better off keeping Waldron and letting him take over instead. Of course, that's just my opinion. It can't be proven right or wrong now. I still believe Waldron has potential and could get another opportunity soon. Who knows? He might even become a head coach in the future. For now, he's another solid candidate for the Raiders to consider, especially given his past experience with Pete Carroll. That said, nothing is guaranteed. Pete Carroll might surprise us and hire someone unexpected, possibly even pulling a coach from the college ranks. But if we're looking at realistic options, there are a few other names worth mentioning. One intriguing candidate is Clint Kubiak. Like Waldron, Kubiak is a talented play caller with a lot of upside. Unfortunately, some of these coaches haven't had much luck because of the situations they've been put in. Waldron, for example, had to work with a rookie quarterback who struggled to play within the system. Coaches can only do so much when the circumstances aren't ideal. Some quarterbacks perform better in structured systems, while others struggle. For example, Jaden Daniels thrives in a well-structured offense, but others, like Derek Carr, haven't always been as consistent. Clint Kubiak experienced this firsthand. When he worked with Derek Carr, things started off well. In the first 2 weeks, Carr looked strong, and Kubiak's offense was putting up 30 to 40 points per game. But by weeks 3 and 4, the performance dipped, and Carr was in and out for the rest of the season. Despite this, Clint Kubiak showed potential as a play caller during his time with the Saints. Unfortunately, the team's head coach was already on the hot seat, and when the coach was let go, Kubiak wasn't retained either. It's a tough situation for any coach, but Kubiak's early success showed he has promise. Another interesting candidate is Bobby Slowik. Unlike Kubiak and Shane Waldron, Slowik wasn't stuck with a coach on the verge of being fired. Slowik worked with rookie quarterback C.J. Stroud and did an incredible job in his first year, helping Stroud shine. However, in the second year, the offense didn't perform as well. Many blamed Slowik for the decline, though Stroud defended him publicly. Eventually, Slowik was let go by the Texans. In my opinion, Bobby Slowik is a highly talented coach who could become a head coach within the next 5 years. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he achieves that before DeMeco Ryans. Quarterbacks like C.J. Stroud often play better when paired with great coaches, and I believe Slowik falls into that category. The Texans' struggles last season weren't entirely Slowik's fault. Their offensive line was in shambles. Key players like their left tackle were out for the year, and their left guard situation was poor due to injuries. They had to rely on backups and even brought in players from other teams' practice squads. With such a banged-up offensive line, it's no surprise the Texans' offense struggled. I feel like Bobby Slowik might have been used as a scapegoat by the Texans. Despite the challenges he faced, he showed last year that he has the potential to be a great coordinator. His name was one of the hottest in football, and for good reason. Comparing him to someone like Ben Johnson, the big difference is the situation. Johnson had the best offensive line and healthy players all season, along with great offensive weapons. In contrast, the Texans lacked those advantages, and their future success will depend on how they build around their roster in the coming years. For the Raiders, Bobby Slowik is someone I definitely consider as an offensive coordinator. Alongside him, there are a few other names worth mentioning, like Doug Peterson, who was recently fired, and Frank Reich, the former head coach of the Indianapolis Colts and the Panthers. There's also Byron Leftwich and DeMeco Ryans, along with some lesser-known but talented options. Many of these coordinators have ties to Pete Carroll or could be realistic candidates for the role. Now, shifting focus to the defensive side, it gets even more interesting. Robert Saleh would have been my dream pick for the Raiders. If we could have landed him, I believe the Raiders could have had a top 3 or top 4 defense in the league. Great defensive coordinators can transform teams, and we've seen this happen across the NFL. Take Dan Quinn, for example. When he joined the Dallas Cowboys, he helped draft players like Darren Bland, a 5th or 6th-round pick who turned into one of the best corners in the league last season. Then, Quinn went to Washington and helped them draft a cornerback from Michigan. I think his name starts with M. That player had an excellent rookie season, too. Another example is Vic Fangio, who's with the Miami Dolphins. Fangio has built a strong defense there, and when he joined the Philadelphia Eagles this year, their defense went from struggling last season to being one of the league's best. In the NFL, it often feels like the defensive scheme and the coordinator matter more than the individual players. Take Robert Saleh as an example. When he was with the 49ers, he drafted and developed players like Fred Warner and Javon Kinlaw, fitting them perfectly into his system. Then he went to the Jets and built another top 5 defense with a different set of players. That's not a coincidence. It's all about the scheme and how players are used. The same can be said about other defensive masterminds like Vic Fangio or Steve Spagnuolo. Their defenses dominate, not just because of star players, but because of how they maximize talent within their systems. Sure, a first-round pick like Abdul Carter will likely outperform a fourth-rounder, but a great coordinator like Gus Bradley or Pete Carroll can turn a later-round pick into a major contributor with the right scheme. This is why I was really hoping the Raiders would bring in Robert Saleh as their defensive coordinator. Unfortunately, he's decided to return to the 49ers. It's a fantastic move for them. They needed him, and I expect him to stay there for a couple of years before landing another head coaching job. Now, looking at the Raiders' current situation, Patrick Graham is someone we need to talk about. He's been with the team for 3 years and has done a solid job. He was even in the running for head coaching positions, interviewing with teams like the Jaguars and Seahawks, though he didn't land either role. Currently, there's only one head coaching spot left, with the New Orleans Saints, but it's unclear if he'll get that opportunity. For the Raiders, I think retaining Patrick Graham would be a great move. He's proven himself as a strong coordinator, and if Pete Carroll values him, the team should make an effort to bring him back and keep him on board.